When you deal with a narcissist, you have to understand one thing: they feed on your reactions. The moment they see you hurt, defensive, or confused, they win. So the real game isn't fighting them. It's becoming so steady, so unshakable, that they can't touch your peace. You're not here to prove yourself to them. You're here to protect your energy, your dignity, and your sanity. Let's talk about how to make yourself emotionally untouchable. A narcissist's greatest weapon isn't their words, it's the way they twist yours. They will drag you into a never-ending cycle of defending, clarifying, and proving yourself. And every time you take the bait, you give them the very thing they want: control over your emotional state. Think about it. How many times have you found yourself in a conversation where you kept explaining your side, only to realize that no matter how logical, clear, or heartfelt you were, they didn't actually hear you? That's because they weren't listening to understand. They were listening to find cracks, weaknesses, and openings to manipulate you. Every explanation you give becomes another thread they can pull until you're tangled in your own frustration. This is not a communication problem, this is a power problem. Narcissists don't engage in conversations to reach mutual understanding, they engage to dominate. When you stop explaining yourself, you strip them of that opportunity. You take away the endless back and forth where they can twist your words and make you doubt yourself. You start sending the message without saying it that you are not available for emotional battles you can never win. The reality is, if someone is determined to misunderstand you, no explanation will ever be enough. You could write them a novel, present evidence, bring witnesses, and they will still distort your meaning. Why? Because the goal is not truth. The goal is to destabilize you. So you have to break the pattern. That means resisting the urge to defend yourself every time they throw accusations, twist events, or act offended by your choices. You do not owe anyone a full presentation for why you live the way you do. Choose what you choose or feel what you feel. You can simply say, "That's my decision," or "I'm comfortable with what I said," and leave it there. Yes, at first, this will feel unnatural. If you've been trained, whether by family, past relationships, or your own people-pleasing tendencies, to always make others understand you, you'll feel the itch to justify yourself. That itch is exactly what they count on. Narcissists know that if they question you enough, you'll rush to clear your name, and in doing so, you'll hand them all the leverage they need. When you stop explaining, you're not being rude, you're being strategic. You're refusing to enter a game where the rules are designed for you to lose. It's like walking away from a rigged slot machine. No matter how many coins you put in, it will never pay out, so why keep feeding it? This is not about cutting off healthy communication. It's about recognizing when communication is a trap. Healthy people don't need 10 explanations for one choice. Healthy people respect your no, your boundaries, and your feelings without turning them into a courtroom interrogation. And here's the thing. They will notice when you stop explaining. At first, they'll push harder. They might get louder, more sarcastic, more accusatory. They'll try to bait you with things like, "Wow, you can't even explain yourself?" Or, "If you were right, you'd tell me why." This is where your power gets tested. You have to remember that explaining is not the same as standing strong. In fact, the more you explain, the more they see you bending. Instead of arguing, you can use short, calm, repetitive phrases that signal the conversation is over for you. "I've already shared what I needed to. I'm not discussing this further. That's how I see it." And then you stop. You don't fill the silence. You don't soften your stance. You hold your ground like a wall. The magic here is that over time, your lack of reaction teaches them something: they can't get emotional fuel from you anymore. Narcissists crave reactions because reactions prove they can still control you. Without your explanations, without your defensive energy, they're left standing in the echo of their own tactics with nothing to feed on. And while they may never admit it, this frustrates them deeply. They may try to find new ways to get under your skin, but the more consistently you refuse to explain yourself, the more they'll realize they have to go elsewhere for that hit of control. There's also another side to this. You start protecting your mental peace in ways you may not have experienced before. When you stop explaining, you save your energy for people who actually deserve it. You create mental space for clarity, for calm, and for your own growth. You stop rehearsing arguments in your head and start living in the present moment without carrying the weight of someone else's distorted version of you. It's liberating to know that you don't have to convince anyone of your worth, your truth, or your intentions. You know who you are, and that's enough. This shift won't happen overnight. You might slip, you might find yourself halfway through an explanation before you catch yourself. That's okay. Awareness is the first step. Every time you stop yourself mid-defense, you're breaking an old habit. Every time you choose silence over explanation, you're reclaiming your power, and over time, it becomes second nature. You begin to realize that the less you explain yourself, the more confident you feel in your own decisions. Confidence doesn't need applause. It doesn't need approval. And it certainly doesn't need permission from someone who's committed to misunderstanding you. In the end, not explaining yourself to a narcissist isn't just about winning a power struggle. It's about stepping into a version of yourself that no longer dances for the approval of people who will never give it freely. It's about sending a clear, unspoken message. My truth is not up for negotiation. And once you own that, you become someone they can't manipulate, can't control, and can't touch emotionally. That's the kind of power that can't be taken away because it's no longer in their hands. Silence is one of the most underestimated forms of power you can hold when dealing with a narcissist. They thrive on noise, your arguments, your explanations, your frustration, your tears. Every reaction you give them is like oxygen to a fire. The more you talk, the more they twist. The more you try to reason, the more they distort, and the more emotional you get, the more satisfied they become. This is why silence works. It's not just the absence of words, it's the absence of emotional fuel. It's you refusing to participate in the game they've set up to make you lose. It's you pulling the plug on their favorite source of energy, your reactions. When you respond with silence, you send a message that no amount of bait will drag you into chaos. At first, it won't feel easy. The instinct to defend yourself, to correct their lies, to have the last word, it will be loud in your chest. You'll want to jump in and set the record straight, especially if they're accusing you of something untrue or deliberately twisting your intentions. But here's the truth. You don't need to correct a story they already know isn't true. They're not mistaken. They're manipulating. Your silence denies them the satisfaction of watching you scramble to prove yourself. There is a certain strength in sitting back, letting their words hang in the air, and refusing to fill the space with your defense. Silence makes them uncomfortable because it forces them to sit with their own behavior. When you don't respond, they don't get to see your pain, and without your visible reaction, they lose the sense of control they're addicted to. You're breaking the pattern they've grown used to: poke, provoke, watch you react. Instead, they get nothing. And nothing is far more powerful than any speech you could give. Now, silence doesn't mean passivity. It's not about letting them walk all over you or pretending what they're doing is okay. It's about choosing your battles and protecting your peace. You can disengage without disappearing. You can set a firm boundary by saying less. For example, when they make a cutting remark, instead of snapping back or explaining why it's hurtful, you can simply give no reaction, no facial expression, no verbal response, nothing for them to grab onto. This is not weakness, this is strategy. And over time, it dismantles their control because it takes away the reward they're after. The most difficult part is enduring the discomfort of silence. Narcissists hate it, and they will try to break it. They'll push harder, insult deeper, even pretend to be concerned, all in an attempt to get you to crack. They might accuse you of being cold, unfeeling, or immature. That's manipulation in disguise. They're trying to make you feel guilty for protecting your boundaries. But guilt is the bait, and your job is to leave it hanging on the hook. You don't have to pick it up. The less you react, the clearer it becomes to both of you that they no longer have access to your emotions on command. It's also important to understand that silence isn't just about not talking. It's about refusing to give emotional reactions in any form. That means no defensive text messages at midnight, no long paragraphs explaining your side, no social media posts aimed at proving a point. All of those things feed the cycle. True silence is a withdrawal of all forms of engagement that give them the attention they crave. You step back, you keep your energy to yourself, and you let them sit with the void. And here's the beauty of this approach. It's not just about the narcissist. It's about you reclaiming control over your own emotional responses. When you master silence, you learn to pause before reacting in every area of life. You start making decisions from a place of calm, not from a place of being triggered. You become harder to manipulate, not just by the narcissist, but by anyone who tries to provoke you. It's a skill that strengthens every relationship you have, because you stop being controlled by the impulse to respond instantly to every poke or insult. Some people will misunderstand your silence. They'll think you're letting the narcissist win by not speaking up. But here's the truth. They can't win if there's no game. When you stop playing, there's nothing to win or lose. You're stepping out of their frame entirely, refusing to operate by their rules. That's the ultimate victory. Not proving them wrong, but making their opinion irrelevant. The narcissist can rant, accuse, or dramatize, but you're no longer in the emotional arena with them. There will be moments when you want to break the silence just to release the tension. But if you can hold it, you'll notice something shift. You'll feel stronger, calmer, and more in control of yourself than you have in a long time. The narcissist might still throw their usual tactics at you, but they'll land flat because you've stopped giving them the reaction they're looking for. It's like trying to light a fire without fuel. It doesn't matter how many sparks they throw, nothing catches. In the end, mastering the power of silence is about reclaiming your emotional autonomy. It's choosing not to be dragged into chaos just because someone else is stirring it. It's refusing to be the predictable, reactive target they've trained you to be. And the longer you practice it, the more you'll realize that silence isn't empty. It's full of self-control, full of dignity, full of the quiet confidence that you no longer belong to their games. And once you taste that kind of freedom, you'll never go back to filling the air just to ease your discomfort. You'll learn to let the silence speak for you, and it will say everything that needs to be said. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They're doors you choose when and how to open. And when you're dealing with a narcissist, those doors must have locks, bolts, and alarms because they will try to walk right through as if they own the place. The challenge is, most people feel guilty about setting boundaries, especially with someone who's skilled at making you feel like you owe them constant access. Narcissists will test you. They will push, prod, and manipulate, not because they misunderstand your limits, but because your limits threaten their control. That's why you need to set them without apology, without hesitation, and without guilt. The first thing you need to understand is that boundaries are not about changing the narcissist. They are about protecting you. If you set them expecting the narcissist to suddenly respect and value your needs, you'll be disappointed. Their response will likely be anger, mockery, or attempts to make you feel selfish. But here's the truth. Boundaries are not selfish. They are a declaration that your time, your energy, and your mental space have value. And anyone who makes you feel wrong for protecting those things is someone who benefits from you having none. The way you set boundaries with a narcissist must be different from how you set them with a healthy person. With healthy people, you can explain the why behind your limits, and they'll respect it because they respect you. With narcissists, explanations are weapons they will use against you. If you tell them, "I can't take your calls after 9 p.m. because I need to rest," they will call at 9:15 just to test you, or they'll guilt you with, "So my needs don't matter." This is why your boundaries should be stated simply, enforced consistently, and backed by action. When you say, "I'm not available for that," you don't need to add a 5-minute explanation. When you say, "I'm ending this conversation," you don't need to justify it. And when you say, "I won't be attending," you don't need to list every reason why. The more you explain, the more they look for loopholes. So you cut off the loopholes by making your boundaries short, clear, and final. And here's the hard part. They will push back. They will accuse you of being cold, mean, or unreasonable. They may even pretend to respect your boundary for a while, only to test it later when they think your guard is down. This is where consistency matters more than anything. A boundary that changes based on their mood, or yours, isn't a boundary, it's a suggestion. And narcissists do not honor suggestions. They only respond to hard, consistent limits with clear consequences. That means if you say, I won't discuss this topic and they bring it up again, you end the conversation every single time without exception. You hang up, you walk away, you disengage. At first, enforcing boundaries will feel exhausting. It takes energy to hold the line, especially when the other person is relentless. But the more you do it, the easier it becomes because you're retraining both them and yourself. You're showing them that you mean what you say, and you're showing yourself that you are capable of protecting your own peace. The guilt will fade when you realize that every time you enforce a boundary, you're choosing your mental and emotional health over someone else's manipulation. Another thing to remember is that boundaries are not punishments. They're not about teaching the narcissist a lesson or making them change. They're about creating an environment where you can function without constant emotional attack. The narcissist may never understand or agree with your limits, and that's fine. Agreement is not the goal. Protection is. If they call you selfish for taking space, that's manipulation. If they try to make you feel guilty for saying no, that's control. You do not have to argue about your right to protect yourself. The beauty of boundaries is that they clarify relationships. The narcissist will either adjust to the fact that they can't cross certain lines, or they will get angry and pull away. Either outcome protects you. If they adjust, they lose some of their power over you. If they pull away, you get distance from someone who drains you. Both are wins. The only way you lose is by abandoning your boundaries to keep them comfortable. And here's the deeper truth. When you set boundaries without guilt, you send yourself a powerful message. I am worth protecting. That message changes how you move in every area of life. You start to notice where you've been giving too much to people who give too little in return. You become less tolerant of one-sided relationships. You start valuing your own time and energy in a way that makes you naturally less attractive to manipulative people. Over time, you'll see that boundaries aren't about building a fortress. They're about creating a sanctuary. You can still have compassion. You can still be kind, but you no longer let kindness become a doorway for abuse. And when the narcissist realizes that guilt, anger, and manipulation no longer move you, they lose their ability to invade your mental space. They may still try, but they'll find the door locked and you holding the key with no intention of opening it just because they're knocking louder. That's the kind of power you hold when you set boundaries without guilt. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, and it's not about proving anything to them. It's about living in a way that keeps your peace intact. Because in the end, the narcissist's opinion of your boundaries doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that you have them, you enforce them, and you never apologize for protecting yourself. One of the most liberating shifts you can ever make when dealing with a narcissist is to stop letting their opinion dictate how you feel about yourself. Narcissists operate like emotional puppeteers. They pull strings by deciding when to give you praise and when to cut you down. They'll make you feel like you're on top of the world one day, only to rip the ground from under you the next. And here's the dangerous part. If your sense of worth is tied to their approval, they will always own you. They know it. They depend on it. That's why detaching your self-worth from their opinion is like cutting the strings. The first step is realizing that their view of you is not reality. It's not truth. It's a distorted mirror that reflects their own insecurities, fears, and need for control. If they belittle you, it's not because you're inadequate, it's because making you feel small makes them feel big. If they withhold compliments or affection, it's not because you're unworthy, it's because dangling those things keeps you chasing them. And if they suddenly shower you with praise, it's rarely because they've had a genuine change of heart, it's because they need something from you. Their opinion is a tool, not a truth. When you begin to see it that way, their words lose power. You stop reading their insults as verdicts on your value. You stop interpreting their silence as proof you've done something wrong, and you stop letting their approval be the green light for your self-confidence. The reality is, they are not qualified to measure your worth. No one is except you. This doesn't mean you won't still feel the sting of their criticism or the pull of wanting them to see your value. You're human. But you can train yourself to pause and remember, this is not truth. This is manipulation. You don't have to fight it. You don't have to argue your case. You simply recognize it for what it is. A reflection of them, not you. And once you stop internalizing their words, they lose one of their most powerful weapons. This detachment also changes how you respond to their praise. Because, let's be honest, praise from a narcissist can feel intoxicating when you've been starved of it. But that high is dangerous because it ties your self-esteem to their mood. When you detach, you can still enjoy the compliment, but you don't let it define you. You know your worth is the same on the days they build you up and the days they tear you down. Their words become background noise, not the soundtrack of your life. To do this, you have to start sourcing your validation from places they can't touch. That might mean focusing on your own small wins, building relationships with people who see you clearly, or simply reminding yourself of the truth about who you are. Keep a list of your strengths, your values, your accomplishments, not for anyone else, but for you. When the narcissist tries to tell you who you are, you already have the evidence that says otherwise. Detaching also requires letting go of the fantasy that one day they'll get it and see your worth for what it is. That fantasy keeps you on the hook, constantly trying to prove yourself in the hope that this time will be different. But you don't need their recognition to validate your existence. You don't need their applause to make your achievements real. The more you wait for them to see you, the longer you postpone seeing yourself. And here's the deeper truth. When you stop letting their opinion matter, they lose interest in controlling you. You become unpredictable to them. They can't dangle approval like a reward. They can't crush you with an insult. They can't keep you running in circles trying to win them over. Your calm, steady sense of self is like a locked door they can't get through. They might pound on it, but they can't shake it. You'll notice something else too. Once you detach, you no longer ride the emotional roller coaster of their moods. You stop feeling elated when they're nice and devastated when they're cold. You start living in your own emotional climate instead of theirs. And that's when you really become untouchable, not because they've stopped trying to manipulate you, but because their attempts no longer land. This doesn't mean you become indifferent or bitter. Detachment is not about building walls so thick no one can reach you. It's about anchoring yourself so firmly in your own worth that no one else's words can shake you loose. You can still care, you can still feel, but you no longer let your identity be shaped by someone whose opinion changes with their agenda. In the end, your worth is yours to define, protect, and celebrate. It's in how you speak to yourself, the standards you set for your life, and the way you treat others, not in the approval or disapproval of someone who thrives on keeping you off balance. Once you own that truth, the narcissist's opinion becomes exactly what it's always been: noise in the background. And when you stop listening to that noise, you step fully into a life where your value is unquestioned, unshaken, and completely untouchable.